Good morning, everybody. So today, welcome back to Anna Chaos Studio. So today, let's go ahead and get going to lesson 9, which is shading part 2. What you're going to be needing today is some paper, some shading pencils, where we'll talk more about it here shortly, and a hard edge. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what we got right here. Let me pull the camera out. So last week, or the last lesson, we talked about how we have some circles, squares, and triangles. So these are your basic shape. And then from your basic shape, what we do is we got the three-dimensional versions of these, which is in this case will be a sphere or an oval. For the square, we can have a cube or rectangle. Okay, so you're just giving the sense of a volume. And then for a triangle, we will have a cone. Are there more complicated shapes than this? Absolutely. This is just me kind of breaking it down. It's kind of crude, but it's just kind of breaking it down. Okay, so what I'm doing here, by me doing the shading, okay, I'm giving the viewer information. So we start with the basic shape. Okay, so there's technically 3 steps. So we have the basic shape. So that's 1. 2, we understand the surface. So in this case, if I'm dealing with a circle, and we talked about this last time, okay, we are telling our audience that this is a curved surface by pretty much, remember the grid that we did? So the further away it goes from that centerpiece, I'm going to keep moving the camera in, the more aggressive that is going to be. Sorry guys, I keep having a hard time adjusting stuff this morning. Okay, so if we're doing shading and my light source is coming from here, we are, instead of actually just shading across this way, just flat, that just doesn't look good. But if we actually curve it, if we curve it as we are shading, we're giving additional information that this is a curved surface. Okay? So we have to understand what the surface is doing. And we did this with, it was the mouse. I'm going to draw this from memory. And we had the 2 buttons. And then we did the grid across from that. So we were telling our audience that this is a roundish shape. That's pretty much us understanding the volume. And then 3 is establishing the actual light source. And those 2 words, light source, in order to tell our audience like, yes, this is a rounded figure, it is a curved surface, and now we're solidifying how does it fit in the environment. Or how is in pretty much how is engaging, how is it responding to the environment, if that makes any sense. So light source, here's the little light bulb that everybody likes to draw. In this case, we have a light bulb to the upper right corner, and it's interacting with this side. This side interacts with, it's going to be lighter versus the other side is going to be darker. And it's going to give you that shading right there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the pencils. Okay, so this is a basic pencil set. You can get this at your local art loft facility. I'm sorry if the text is backwards. It's just the way that this thing records. But yeah, so you can get this at your local. It's Art Loft, Artist Loft. Okay, and what this does is this comes with a set. So this goes from B to 6B. Okay, so these are mostly your B's. I thought I had some H's in here. Nope, no H's. Okay, that's fine. I could do without the H. Okay, so the way this works is that you have the way the pencil sets come into like 4 sets. So you'll have sets of 3, 6, 12 is what you mostly get in art school. Yeah, it's 3. I could spell school. And then the 24 is what I call the big boy set. Okay, and let me show you what the big boy set looks like. Okay, I've only had a massive set of 24, and the range goes from 12B all the way to 10H. Now, here's how this works. Okay, so this is the range, this is the middle. Okay, on this far end here, we have B12. Like I said, I'm sorry that it's kind of doing it backwards because that's just the way the camera films. So B12 and then 10H. Okay, in the center here, we have HB and F. This is what your pretty much your standard pencils are at. And then you go from B1 all the way to B12, and then you go to H1 to H12. Now, a B pencil is pretty much rated for darkness. I don't want to call it blackness because that sounds terrible, but it's darkness. How darker can you get? So darkness. My brain's not fully awake. It's 4:30 in the morning. So darkness, and then softness. Okay, the darker you go, the softer the lead would be. So this is why when a lot of people they start learning how to use these sets, they realize that they go through their B's faster than they go through their H's, and that's because when they're using their B's, the clay is softer, so you tend to go in a lot faster. Okay, it's also the reason why normally you see when artists they do paper or they do like traditional illustrations with pencil, they put a piece of paper underneath their hand so that way it keeps the lead from getting into their skin and then smearing it all over the place. So the higher the number on the B's, the darker and the softer the clay is going to be. Now on the opposite spectrum, you have the H, and then the H is what happens is you have, so H1 is pretty much just off your standard pencil. So like these would probably be, let me take a look at the mechanical pencils real quick. So you can even see it when you go to your mechanical pencils. See? So this is the lead for mechanical pencil, and it says right there is HB. HB is your standard for most mechanical pencils. So most people tend to dabble right here in the center, which is a good medium. And then these take forever to wear down. The 10H, this is like as light as you can get because the lead is so hard. So, and there is no softness. It's just so hard and light. Let's just go with that. So that's the one thing you want to understand about your drawing pencils. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and I'm going to create a grid. And unfortunately, I thought I had a full set here. I should have paid attention when I was at the store. So I'm probably going to go ahead and try to trade these back because I wanted one that had the ages in it, and I didn't see it. But that won't stop me from doing today's lesson. That's totally fine. Okay, so the way this works out is you set up a grid, and we're just gonna do some basic shades here. Okay, so right here I'm going to do, actually, can I do that? Can I do that? You know what? I'm just gonna deal with it. Okay, so I'm just gonna do it with whatever set that I have in here, so you guys can see the range. I can afford this. I can afford to let go of the $8. Okay, so what do I have here? I have a B, 2B. So here, let me just kind of do it the other way. B, because this is the closest to 0, and I really wish I had the H's. And I no longer have my old pencil sets, unfortunately. 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B. There we go, so you guys can see. So I'm gonna go right here. I'm gonna pull these out, if it'll let me. All right, and we're gonna go right here. We're gonna start with this. Now, this paper is regular printer paper, so it's not gonna have a lot of teeth to it, but it works for these purposes. So here is a B. Yes, ma'am, ma'am. I already gave you treats. No more treats for you. So that is a B. I'm going to lay them out right here. Okay, and the next one is going to be a 2B. And I'm not really doing much. I'm just putting the same amount of pressure as I'm drawing these. 3B. You can see that the lead is getting progressively darker as I'm going through this. Now, I'll be honest when I say that when I used to use pencil sets, the back in my younger career, just like anything, you're gonna have like your favorite colors, you're gonna have your favorite tones. Probably my favorite tone was the HB, 2B, and 6B. And again, I'm putting the same amount of pressure as I'm going right through this, and you can see it. You can see right here. As I'm going right through, this is a 6B. Like I said, I'm sorry that it's written kind of backwards. Maybe I need to learn how to write backwards for these videos. Anyway, so this right here is a 6B, and then this right here is a 2B, and that's a B. And as you can see, as I go through, that the higher the number gets, the darker the darker it gets, and the softer the lead is. And you can feel it when you're drawing too. So, if you get a pencil set of your own, I will highly suggest for you to just kind of just kind of go ahead and draw a basic grid, and then try to hold the same consistency across when you're drawing with these pencils, and that way you can see the differences. Personally, for me, it this the it's this is one of those things that you kind of learn, but when you're out in the field, you kind of, I mean, I know that I don't use it, but I also did not go for the traditional medium. I went straight from a traditional medium to animation. And for animation, most of what I used is like mechanical pencils and stuff. So I use a blue pencil, mechanical pencil, or I mostly did digital. So the concept of me constantly having to swap pencils to get a tone, it never worked for me. What did work for me is me kind of getting all the tones that I needed out of a single pencil, because again, I didn't have a lot of means, so I just learned how to build the muscles in my hand, and I got all the values that I needed just from one pencil. And this is what I got used to when I was learning how to do traditional medium on my own, on a very, 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 very low budget. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and do some shading exercises. I'm gonna put this up here. Okay, so the best way that I can put it, all right, we're gonna go from dark to light. Let me try to do something real quick. Give me a second. Okay. Nope, don't let me do it. That's okay. I was trying to check something with the visuals. Okay, so for this, I'm gonna switch pencils. This is kind of hard to do with a mechanical pencil. Um, I don't have that many regular pencils on me. Okay, that's fine. I'll just use the pencils that I have up here. I was trying to avoid using these, but I'm gonna use them. Okay, so the first one, we're gonna go from dark to light. So you grab your pencil, go to your darkest point, and then you do that until you get your lightest point. So you go from dark to light. Personally, myself, I like to go in in sideways when I'm doing these, but that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and do another exercise. Okay, now we're gonna go backwards. So I tilt my paper because this is comfortable to me, but technically I was cheating. So let's do that again. Dark too late. So this is going to go from dark to lightest in one stroke. And then let's go ahead and do that again. But this time, we're going to go from the lightest point to the darkest point. And because this is my 6B, I am trying to be incredibly gentle with this. Yeah, that was kind of crummy. Let's try that again. Too dark. And again, depending where you hold your pencil to, especially trying to transition from light to dark. So as you can see, I was kind of struggling. One, I have a slippery surface. Two, this is not the best paper, but you get the gist of it. You want to go from light to dark, dark to light, and then right here, let's go to the next one. Dark, light, dark. Yes, ma'am. Dark. And it's easier to go from the darkest to the lightest than it is to go from the lightest to the darkest. And then you're going to do that in reverse. Light, dark, light. And most of this I'm doing with the pressure of my hand. So I'm just kind of building all that up. So this helps you, just like the lines. Remember that? Okay, and as you can see, so much easier with pencil than this with mechanical pencil with ink. It's the same thing. Except that now we're doing it with values. Okay, and you can get really creative. Meow meow, what do you want? You got food. I know you got food. I put food in your bowl. Don't lie to me. Okay, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Okay, and you could do variations of this just to kind of build the muscles in your hands. Dark, light, dark, light, dark. Okay, not my best, but you can see the value change there. Dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. See if I can go really heavy. Dark. There we go. So there you got a good value from darkest to lightest. Okay, and again, this helps you build your building your muscles in your hand for pressure. You can see right there. There's my left hand. There's my right hand. This is technically my right hand right here. You can see that big muscle right there, where it's I've developed that throughout the years from drawing. Okay. So I would suggest as a warm up to go ahead and kind of develop this. Just kind of do a couple sheets of this when you start. Do the thick, what is it, thin line, thick line, thin line, thick line. Then do dark to light to start building those muscles. And consider that like your warm up. Like when you do PT, you have some warm ups, and this is pretty much your brain and your hands warm up. Okay, let's go ahead and go from there. Okay, so the one thing that you want to understand about light is that, so there's a whole scientific range of how do we see light, how does light behave. You could go online, there's people that can explain this at a scientific level, because when you think about it, science and art kind of goes hand in hand. Okay, they go together. So it's you most of it is art is just people observing surfaces and then seeing how light responds to it, or how the object responds to the light or the environment and whatever. So here's a good example. Okay, so we all had this experiment in high school. We have like a tank. Okay, so here's a tank. It's like a little container. And in the tank, there is some water. Let's pretend this is some H2O. Okay? Now, if we have a light source, let's say a focused beam, and I'm sure you guys did this because I did this in my high school, actually high school, middle school. So here is a beam of light right there. And when it hits the surface, because this is water, okay, it doesn't immediately goes right through. It actually, it bends. Okay. So there is like actual straight. So you have surfaces that have pure reflection. So let's pretend this is a mirror. So this is reflective. So in a mirror surface, the light will hit and it will bounce back. Now, things that are reflective could be because of the shine or the sheen or the what's that called, the coating, the surface coating. Or it could be the color. And we'll talk about more about that because light behaves different depending what you're looking at. But what I'm trying to say is, without getting too scientifically too deep into this, is that when you're drawing, you have to understand and at least study the medium that you are trying to replicate to get it to look accurate, because there is, it behaves different depending on the source that you're going through. So light is going to behave different through air. Air is going to just kind of go right through, okay, versus when it goes through liquid. So liquid is gonna pretty much, it's going to change direction depending on which direction is coming. Okay, it also depends on the viscosity or the density. The denser it is, the less the light's gonna go right through. If you have something that is fully reflective, so let's say this is water, regular density. If you have something that is fully reflective, is going to bounce back, so on and so forth. So I will start when you're trying to do something, and this is especially when we're looking at characters. Okay, so let me just kind of bring this back. So if you have a character, just to kind of put it in something that is not as boring as sin. Okay, so you have a character right here, and on the character you have multiple different textures. So you have the skin, you have the hair. Okay, so let's give him a crazy bun. Okay, they have the hair. Wait, we gotta do the ringlets because that seems to be really popular in anime, the little crazy ringlets. Okay, then she's wearing a top right here that is metal, but it's not reflective. Okay, so that's gonna have a different look. The metal is gonna be held on the body with leather. Okay. And then right here we have, maybe this is a low level character. They will have just a plain shirt. And then they have, I don't know, basic pants, so cotton. And then they have like leather boots. Okay, so in order to make this look realistic, you have to kind of understand, okay, if here's my character, is my character made out of normal human flesh? Are they made out of rock? Are they made out of sand? Are they alien and they have translucent skin? So you have to understand what material you're working with first, and then you have to understand how it behaves in the light source. So obviously something that's metal but is dim is still going to have more reflection than something that is leather, unless it's been a very heavily treated leather, like a purse. And even then, treated leather is always dull. It doesn't reflect. So you see already I'm understanding the differences on material. Then you have a shirt. What is the shirt made out of? Polyester, cotton, you know, if you go back to the making of Shrek 1 and 2, I think it was the making of Shrek 2, they had to bring in tailors in to help the animators create materials because they want to make sure that the leather look like leather, that the silks look like silk, and that is part of the process, that is part of the study. So even in the light, it had to look and feel a particular way to be believable. And this is why I tell people that when you are studying to be an artist, you have to go just beyond. It's like, yep, it's leather. Here's a light, here's a shadow, and then that's it. That's where you also see a lot of people where they'll do like, and I see this all the time in ArtStation, where they'll do all these cubes, and one would look like lava, another one would look like wood. They're material studies, and you see one of them look like gelatin. Look it up. Just go to ArtStation, and I know it's written backwards, and type in material studies. Okay, and you will see those right there. Okay, so there's that portion. So let's go ahead and continue going through these. All right, so let's go ahead and actually talk about light, and how it actually behaves. Like I said, if any of this stuff doesn't make sense, guys, just put it in the comment and I'll try to go back and clarify. So the first thing you want to know about light is that if we had a single point of light in space, I'm talking like actually in space, let's say this is a star, okay? Light moves at 360 degrees, literally in all directions. All right, so this is a single point of light, and if you do 3D, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a single point of light that you can put in the environment. It's all the way across and it's not obstructed. All right, when you have a light source, the famous one is a light bulb. While there is still, it has a wide range. Let's say it's just the light bulb by itself. There's nothing else. It's still not going to be 360 because the lower part of this is obstructed, because this is how it gets the power to light this up to generate the light. However, you can see it's still pushing out. However, if we put that same light bulb inside, let's say, a lamp, here's what it does. Okay, we have a light bulb that we already established here that the light is going in all directions. When you put it on a cone, so this light right here is coming straight out, but the ones in the corner right here that would have gone all the way out if it wasn't for this obstruction are going to be bounced in and back, and this is going to make a more defined cone. Does that make sense? Because all surfaces are technically reflective, at least most of them are. Okay, so in this case, because we have restricted our light into this cone, it's going to make it more focused. Now, the closer you are to the center, the higher it's going to be as you start getting away from the light. So let's say this is the range. You're going to start getting a little bit of a drop off. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, just go ahead and do that. Go to your bedroom, turn everything off, and if you have what I call the little Pixar lamp, you know what I'm talking about, the little Pixar lamp with the stand. Simply turn everything off except for the lamp and look how it behaves. Look how the light behaves in your room. All right? Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay. Now, the next thing you also want to know is that light is reflective. Okay, so if I have a light bulb here, let's say this is my cone. Okay, here is my surface. When it hits the surface, okay, it's going to bounce back. It has to engage. So the light's coming from the sun. So here's the best way to explain it. We have the sun. Yay, here's the sun. Haha. We have Earth. Okay, so we have Earth. Okay, between Earth and the sun, obviously there's more distance than this. We have something called atmosphere. And it's probably misspelled, but I don't care. Okay, light has many waves of color that goes through. Okay, as the light is traveling between our atmosphere, Okay, depending on what we're looking at, certain lights would remain out here. Other lights will go right through, and we only see a fraction. So yeah, so some of it will kind of get bounced out. Some of it would go right through. And to be honest, in the giant scope of the color range, let's pretend it's the color range, we only see this much of the color scope with our eyes. Anything else we cannot see. So this is where we see our rainbow. Okay, so you have things like radio waves, microwave, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. But all that we get to see is the visible light right here that goes right through and that hits Earth. And you can look this up. This is science. how, how, how that works. But that's pretty much the everything in a nutshell. So anyway, so the light comes through, hits a surface, and depending on what the surface is made of, it's going to respond differently. Now, on average, when it hits, okay, if this is a dull surface, so let's say if it's dull, so the more dull and dark, the less reflection, the more, what's it called, reflective and bright, the more reflection you're gonna have out. So let me get a fresh sheet of paper because this looks like crazy people stuff right here. Okay, so just to recap, light source in a lamp. If it's a dull surface, okay, excuse me, it's going to be so dull, and then dark. It's going to have less reflection. But if it's highly reflective and it's light, it's going to have more reflection. So the best way that I like to describe it is, I've lived in Florida. I lived in the South for most of my life. And the one thing that you learn is that if you own a dark vehicle in the South, when it's the middle of the summer, you're going to roast alive because your vehicle, what happens is the light hits your vehicle, and because it's a dark tone and it's less reflective, it absorbs some of that light, aka the heat. So you walk inside and you feel like you're gonna die, or you're just gonna be cooked in 5 minutes. So that's why you see a lot of people, they purchase a lot of lighter colors in the South because it's more reflective, so that it keeps their car cool. Doesn't mean it makes much of a difference, because I mean it kind of does, it doesn't. But I could tell you, especially in the older vehicles, man, you had a black car back in the 90s, and you were gonna to die in your car. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of the different, how light works different depending on what you are doing. So you have a couple things to keep in mind. You have solid versus translucent. You also have dull versus reflective. And then you also have dark versus light. And this is how my brain breaks it apart. This is how my brain breaks it apart. So let's go ahead and take a look at examples. So right here, I'm going to draw a ball. And this is going to be rubber. Okay, so rubber on average tends to be kind of dull. So think of it like a lacrosse ball. It's gonna be kind of rough. The light source is gonna be right here, so it's gonna be kind of gritty, kind of rough. It's not gonna be very reflective. Normally they tend to be, I think they're white or gray. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen a lacrosse ball. You can tell it's 4:30 in the morning. My drawing is, it's just ain't happening right now. But I can't sleep, so I might as well be productive and make a fun lesson for you guys. Okay, So your standard rubber ball is not going to be very reflective. On average, it's going to be dull material. So this would be solid. This is a solid object and is dull. Okay, so not a lot of reflections coming out of this. So metal, on the other hand, so metal is very interesting and just to do accurate, um, mm, just to do really accurate metal, that's just like a lifetime of study. So normally what you'll see in comics is that they will imply that one side, and it's very, because it's reflective. You ever looked at a reflective surface? It has very defined edges. So what folks tend to do is that they'll draw kind of like a little, like they'll make one side lighter. They'll draw like a sheen on one side, and then on the other side they'll define the ball. You can look at comics. If you look at any Silver Surfer comics, and you'll see what I mean when they deal with him. And I'm talking like when they was like hand painted, hand drawn, not the modern Photoshop ones, but like the original ones, or even actually look at anything by Alex Ross. His Silver Surfers are fantastic. Um, so you have a hard defined edge because again it's reflective. Okay, you're gonna have the opposite side. This is where the line, providing shading in lightweight comes into play. Okay, and then you'll have something where they'll do this, so they'll indicate, because again, most of these spheres are like on a surface. You're gonna see it reflecting on there. You're gonna see something that looks like this. And again, this is just me kind of quickly popping something out of my head. So you have something that is solid but very reflective. Okay, so what's happening here is that here's my light source. This side right here, so this is going to be more of an implied line. So it hits here. Okay, so this is my lightest point. However, here's a other couple of things that are happening. This is why this is not shaded all the way through. The light is hitting down here and it's also reflecting back onto the metal surface. And this is happening multiple times. So even though the light will go past this edge, it's still reflecting back. Okay, this is what's just kind of happening. It's also picking up any details that is happening in the environment. That's why if you look at the MC Escher of him holding the ball, it's still such a fascinating image because he is dealing with a reflective, it's kind of like a reflective ball, but you also see like what's called the fisheye effect for perspective. But look at how that ball is shaded and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so we go right here. The last one, I am going to do a bubble. Yes, a little bubble. Now, a bubble is kind of interesting because it's a hybrid. So it is translucent. It's also reflective. Okay, so it pretty much does both. And depending on what's the density of the soap, I guess you can have some colors or color tints. Okay, but let's mostly focus on these two. So a bubble is very delicate. So normally when you see people draw a bubble, you're gonna see that the lines are very undefined because it's literally like just one wrong sneeze away from bursting. So you're already implying by the line weight that this is a very frail surface. Now, depending again, what's happening is specific formulas, and this is something that I've observed, is that when you blow a bubble, immediately most of the soap, because of gravity, it gets kind of sucked up right here at the bottom. So you see a lot of movement and a lot of swirling in the bubble right here. So on average, the lower half is going to be a little bit thicker than the upper half. And then you're going to see something similar to the metal ball. You're going to start seeing some very faint reflections. But again, because the soap kind of gives it kind of like a rainbowy look, it's going to be very, very faint. And then back here, instead of being really solid, the edge is kind of implied that is circular. And you can look this up. Like I said, just look at some bubbles and study them. What you see most cartoons that they do just to imply they do a really light line, and then they do this. They do like a little hint because again, it's a reflective surface. So this right here tells the viewer, it's like, hey, this is a bubble, and here's the shine right here, and this is what I've seen most of my entire life as an animated bubble. It's just this right here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about a drop off. Okay. Okay. Let's say this is my light source. Actually, let me draw this like this. Okay. So here is. Now you can get into all the sciences stuff, and then it's like you could. There's actually legit mathematics on how to do this, but right now I'm just kind of covering the basics. And it also depends on the strength of your light bulb. So let's say this is your standard 60 watt light bulb, and you can do this at home again. Just go ahead and set up a lamp, a small lamp, turn out the light, and then take a look at it. Take a look what it does. The closer you are to the light source, the brighter it's going to be. As you continue to get further away, it starts losing some of this brightness. This is pretty much called a drop off. So think of this as that shading that we did earlier. So you have bright, and then as you go through, more darkness is getting in here. So you have what is known as a drop off. Obviously, right now I'm drawing this segmented, so it makes sense. But I'm just pretty much trying to show you the drop off on here. Okay, so there's that. Where have we seen this? Let me show you. Let's say you have a dramatic sequence where you have like a detective story, and here is the character standing right here waiting for somebody. Let's do the cigarette smoke. This is pre health advisors. You know, when people used to smoke for fun, and it was recommended by every doctor. Okay. No, it's just my cat being crazy. Okay. So this is the scene, right? We have our character. They're underneath the spotlight. Okay. Since they're the main point of focus, okay, they are going to be in the light. The further away they get from the light, the more of a drop off you're going to see. So let's say this is the main point of focus. Here I have new character entering the scene. This guy's in the shadows, so it's going to be. Hold on one second. My cat's being a real putz. Will you stop? Thank you. Um, I love my kitty, but she is a real pain sometimes. And yes, she does get treats. She gets 3 hours of play every day. I have tons of toys. I literally have a bucket of toys, and there's interactive toys. Okay. Alright, so here is my character A, character B entering the scene. Okay. Out here, this is the brightest point. But as we start getting away from that, we're going to see a drop off on the light. Just to give it a more natural look. Some drop offs are more instant, others are a little bit more. Um, like it's a little bit more long winded, as I like to call it. And most of this is normally done with color. I'm just kind of using this with my mechanical pencil as a quick example. But you can see brightest point. So let's do bright, light, dark, medium, dark, and then dark. So I break it into four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Does that make sense? So that's a good example of showing a light drop off in an actual environment and scene. Okay. Okay, when you are setting up a scene, and I need to get some more paper, but I'm going to keep talking. When you are setting up a scene, and this is for your more advanced artists, you need to ask yourself a couple questions, especially when it comes to color. So, because you have there's several things that are into play. This is why drawing is it takes forever. It takes a very long time to develop drawing, because now you're understanding. Here's how it goes. Let's say here's my object. So you're understanding the shape. You're understanding the surface. So aka curvature, if there's any. Then you're dealing with lighting. Then lighting goes in hand with color for mood. So think of like any Star Wars image where you see Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or Darth Maul, where you see them kind of like, hey, I am a bad guy. Let's say Darth Maul here. I can't draw him because, Disney will come after me. But he's standing right here. He's got his double-sided lightsaber, lightsaber 1, lightsaber 2, and you see the really dramatic lighting reflecting from the red saber onto his face. Okay, so lighting does just give a sense of mood. So you have now to also deal with that as well. So the questions you need to ask is what colors, okay, what colors are being used? All right, if you have red plus blue, guess what? Some areas are going to be red, some areas are going to be blue, and then wherever they overlap is going to be purple. Okay, let me explain. And you see this a lot on movie posters. So to get a more dramatic sense, and I might need some color pencils for this. Let me get my color pencils real quick. Okay, so I have a dramatic scene here. Okay, from this side, we're getting red light. Sorry, I like this desk, but all my stuff slides off of it. So I might have to keep some poster board on here so it keeps my items from sliding off. And this is blue, right? Everywhere where blue hits, it's going to have that dramatic blue tone. Everywhere the red hits, oh, you're going to have that dramatic red tone. And then in between, wherever they overlap, you might have the purple tone. You see what I mean? So it gives it a really dramatic tone with the lights. So not only are you dealing with the lighting, but you're also dealing now with color in order to give it a mood. So what colors are being used? Um, what color harmonies? So we start getting a little bit into color harmonies here. When, so, and I know this sounds really crazy. Color harmonies are really important. There's a whole section on color theory that I'll go into, but mostly is what's the scene? What's the mood that you're trying to portray? Okay. What is the goal here? I guess that's pretty much what it comes down to when you're dealing with lighting. Are you trying to come with something that is really lighthearted? Are you trying to get something that's really dramatic? And that again, both the shading and the color go into play. So think of like any horror poster versus something like, I don't know, Hi Poofy I'm a Uni, or anything like it's indie like Steven Universe. Steven Universe has dark undertones, but it's supposed to be lighthearted kind of slice of life, but dealing with a kid with alien powers. So they're trying to make it appealing, fun for kids for a younger demographic, But it does have a lot of dramatic color tones. It's just that they use a lot of pinks and purples if you watch the show. So yeah, yeah. Okay. So again, I don't want to go into color theory too much today, because again, I want to make sure that that's a whole new section. But know that when you're dealing with lighting and shading, this is pretty much what you're keeping in mind at this point. You got this physical shape. You have to know what the surface is doing. You have to understand what your lighting is doing or what colors are being applied to your environment. All right. Now let's go ahead and talk about doing some basic shading. Actual basic shading. We're going to start with three tones. Okay, 3 to 4. Let's do 4 tones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be light, light gray, dark gray, and then dark. These are going to be our 4 tones. Man, I can't write for beans. Dark gray and then dark. Okay. When you are doing a shot, you need to figure out where your light is in relation to your item. So right now, I want to light a cube. Okay, so here's my cube. I'm gonna do this 3 times so you guys can see how this works. Lighting 1, lighting 2, lighting 3. Okay, if I grab this cube, I'm gonna draw this 3 times so you guys can see. Okay, on this first one, my light source is coming from the left. So I'm sorry, like I said, the camera's flipped. I try to get it flipped, so but it's just not cooperating. Okay, in this case, the side that we cannot see is getting exposed by light, because remember, we're dealing with a cube, so it's 6 planes. The top is getting hit directly with light, and then right here on the side, this is kind of getting partial light. But remember, we talked about this, light wraps around. So even though it's not hitting it directly, there's still some light hitting it because the light is hitting the surfaces around it and reflecting back. So this right here is going to be between a light gray and a dark gray. So let's say for this one, let's put LG. So light. So 1, 2, and then back here we can either go with 3 or 4. So this tells my audience that I'm dealing with a cube. It's in a 3-dimensional space. It's below the horizon line because we can see the top. And then on top of that, there's a light source coming from the left. So let's go ahead and now go all the way to the next one. So this is lighting source 2. It's coming from the top. Okay, if y'all been outside on noon, you know this. Your shadow, there's hardly, your shadow is directly below you when it's noon. Okay, so right here in this case, the top is being fully immersed on the lightest tone, so it would be number 1. And then the sides could be 2 or 3. So right now I'm just going to make them 2, because even though they are not being directly hit by light, it's still hitting the areas around it and then bouncing towards the surfaces. Okay, so that's the light above. And then let's go to 3. And then something similar. Again, same thing that we did here, but not from the opposite side. So if this is my light source, it's getting hit directly, so these are fine. And then right here on the side, this one's not getting hit directly, but it still gets some shading. So it gives me some shading on that side. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. So you have to understand what your item is, what the surface is doing, how is it located, where is it located in your environment, and how this item engaging with the light source? Where's the light source located in relation to this item right here? Hopefully I'm not starting to sound too crazy, but hopefully this will kind of give you guys an idea of what to do here. All right. Now, let's go ahead and try to apply this to a sphere. All right. Let's start with something a little simpler. Let's do a cylinder. Or a Red Bull can. All right. Let's say my light source is coming from this direction. Okay. Now, we've already established that this is a curved item. Even though we don't see all the way around, we know it's a curved item. We're also keeping in mind that this is the center. Again, the further away you go from the center, the more aggressive that line gets. Okay, but here's the other thing. We have to understand how this value ranges. Okay, this is the side that's closest to my can. And again, you're looking at, I'm going to go ahead from this from the top you to understand what I'm looking at. So this is my, I'm going to just do the little soda can thing right here. So it looks like a can. Okay, if my light source is here, from here to here, it's getting fully exposed by the light. So almost all the way to the halfway point, this is going to be in the light's view. Okay, does that make sense? Now from here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start breaking this down. So I'm going to have this, I'm going to grab this in half. So this is going to be light gray because again, we understand that when light hits the surface, it wraps around the surface. Light also wraps around, it doesn't reflect, it also wraps around the curvature. So from here to here, so let's say this is, I don't know, 180 degrees, this is 45 degrees. I know that math. Anyway, so this is going to be light gray. And then right here, we divide this in half one more time. This is going to be dark gray, and this is going to be dark. And it's pretty much the same thing in the opposite direction. So let's just go ahead and implement that so you guys can see it. So, and I'm going to do this in sections instead of blending it in because I want you guys to see it. So there is my dark. That's right there. There is my dark gray. Notice that I'm not shading up and down because this is a curved surface. So if I shade up and down, it flattens it out. And then here's my light gray. And again, this is just for the exercise. There we go. So we have, so now our can, this side's getting hit by the most light. Then in the midpoint right here, so we start transitioning to light gray, and dark. All right, so let's start with that. Now let's go ahead and move over to circles real quick. Okay, so the similar thing happens when you're doing circles. Circle 1, circle 2, circle 3. And I don't have a, do I have a soda? Yep, I do. Hell yeah. Actually, for this, I'm going to start with a fresh. Yeah, if you have a little soda top, this is perfect for this exercise right here. See, I'm just like my cats. I just play with garbage, apparently. Go ahead and get rid of that. 1. 2. 3. Okay. So we have ball 1, 2, and 3. So for this one, I'm going to put my light source to the left, on the top, and to the right. Okay. Now, okay, we talked about this before. Okay. So right here, I'm going to take a look at this. So if my light source is coming from this side, okay, my light source is coming from this side, the majority of this is going to be on highlight. Now, this is a circular surface, okay? So I'm looking at this, and for this I am going to draw a slight circle here. Again, just do the best you can. This is going to be my light, because I'm looking at curvature right here. I am curving it. So I'm looking at this like this is the top of a beach ball. And I'm just kind of looking at so if this is a beach ball right here, it's that whole kind of doing like the candy ball thing. Not sure that makes any sense, but whatever. Light, light gray, dark gray, and then dark. That's pretty much what's going to happen right here. Closest to the light source, second closest to the light source, third closest, and last right here with the dark. And I'm going to do the same thing here at the top. So my light source is coming from the top. Is the side that's closest to it, so that's the lightest point. Light gray, I'm going to put LG, dark gray, and then dark. And we're going to repeat that again right here on the right. Light, light gray, dark gray, dark. Okay, so that's how that goes. Alright, so I'm just going to do this all with one pencil. Do we have a 2? I should have a 2B in here. So that way, yep, 2B works for me. 2B is my pretty standard if I'm ever using art pencils. So this is going to be my darkest point. And notice that I'm still kind of trying to curve. Right here, I'm just trying to curve. Like I said, it's kind of hard because this is printer paper, so it has no tooth on it. So it makes it very hard to get some good sketching in here. Okay. So again, dark, dark gray, light, light. Just going to repeat that again right here. Dark gray, or this, excuse me, dark. Light gray, and then dark. Now right now I'm just kind of dividing this in sections so you guys can see the drop out, but for most part you go from like really kind of like that gradient exercise, you go from really light to really dark, and that's how you do that. But for this exercise we're just kind of breaking it down into sections so you can visibly see what this is how artists think when we're looking at lighting. Some people break it down into simple blocks, other people do full spectrum, so on and so forth. All right, so that's the way you want to kind of apply this into your shading. Again, this is broken down very simple for educational purposes, but for most part, you can go ahead and do this however you want, or however you want to, however works best for you. But this is the simplest way to start, and then you go up from there. All right, so let's go and do it one more time. I'm trying to draw this very light. Okay, so right now, it's pretty much the traditional way right here. So here's my light source. Okay, here's my sphere. And the way that this works out is you go from really dark to really light. Sorry if I'm not saying much. I'm just trying to focus. There's a lot going on in the background with the cats. I'm not sure. I think they're just getting their 3 a.m. sumis. And they're just excited to see me as they're having the 3 a.m. sumis. Alright, but for the most part, you do more of a gradient from your lightest, or your darkest point to your lightest point. And again, I'm not going to use my 6B on this because this doesn't have, there's no need, especially as smooth as this paper is. And we could talk about paper weight and texture another time. I got a really good array of different papers that are different paper types that I collected throughout the years. So we could talk more about that. There we go. So we have that right there. I know looks it's kind of meh. Okay, we got that. Then from here, let me figure out. Okay, so this is more what you see when you're doing shading. You pretty much go through the value where you go from the darkest to the lightest in one shot. But again, we're dealing with a circular surface, so you just don't want to do this flat because if you're just doing, if you have a circle and all you're doing is this all the way across, it just looks flat. It doesn't add too much to it. So you have to make sure that you kind of curve as you are shading to tell your items like, hey, again, there's that volume information. And you can try this with colors too. This gets really interesting. I know in my community college, let's see if I can find it. Instead of doing these shading exercises, but instead of just one light source, I was doing 2 or 3 different light sources. Okay, so there's that. Now, there are 2 more minor points that I do want to talk about. Oh, at least one more minor point before I end today, because the next lesson is going to be trying to find your shadow. But for today, I want to talk about behavior and how you tackle shading. So this is going to be a part 3. Okay. When you have an object, what's the best way that I can describe this? I'm going to pull out. Okay, actually, I might have to do that. Okay, actually, I could do it. I could do it. Okay. The closer your object, so let's say this is a surface, right? And the light source is coming from up here. Okay. The closer your item is to that surface, the more defined that shadow is going to be. Okay. The closer that object is to the surface, the more defined the item is going to be. Versus the further away this object is from a surface. This makes sense when you really think about it. The more blurry. So even though you could see it, it's not going to be as defined. It's going to look kind of fuzzy. And it's not going to look as sharp. It's going to be more blurred. So here, let me show you. So I have a light source right here. In fact, you can see it right here with the pencil. See, the closer it is to the surface, look how nice and crispy it is when it's touching, versus as I start moving away, look how it started to just kind of blur. So there's still a shadow there, it's just not as defined. Okay? Alright guys, so with that, this is a really good stopping point. I think I need some water. I've been talking for a while. We'll go ahead and do a part 3 of shading. I hope you guys enjoyed what we covered in today. And if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. I always appreciate it. You guys are excellent. Like I said, I'll keep making these videos. I miss teaching. I haven't done it in a long time. And this also kind of helps me too, because as I'm working on my other projects, I need to reconnect back with some of my traditional medium. So this really helps me a lot too. So I hope you guys are enjoying the process and pretty much how I approach this for educational purposes. So folks kind of everybody from every walk of life can understand it and then build that knowledge from there. And like I said, I'm not the know all by all. There are other artists that go further in depth and they have different versions of approaching the same problem. So please do not just limit yourself to just me. Also, research what other artists are doing and how they explain it. Because my version might not work, but their version will work for you. So I always encourage for you guys to, learn beyond just one person. But anyway, guys, I appreciate it. You guys enjoy your day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.